Frisellas all around the yard. I am your host, Tony Frisella, and we have a very fun conversation about beginning your garden, or for tips for beginner gardeners along those lines. I have with me today our garden center manager, Laura Hill. Laura, how you doing?
Hello, I am wonderful.
So we were just doing we had a little pre-conversation before it, and she says that I already am way too broad with some of the information I have. So she brought with her notes, and she goes, well, I think this is going to be a little more helpful. I'm like, well, great. That's why you're on the show today. So, what we want to talk about is a couple of different types of gardens. And if you just moved into a home and you said, hey, I want to have a garden. Well, that's like saying I want a big yard. Well, big is subjective. So gardening is going to be something different to everybody, and we're going to go over some of those different variations. There's different types of gardens. Some people want butterfly gardens. Some people want veggie gardens. Some people want a meditation garden, which is probably in the least of the buckets. But there's some really cool ideas that I was sharing with Laura that one of our designers and I were exposed to in Toronto, Canada, at a landscape design event that we were lucky to be at. So without further ado, let's jump into butterfly gardens and garden. How would somebody? So where should somebody put a butterfly garden, or what kind? What is there a certain size that a butterfly garden has to be? Is there a certain place that it has to be in the yard? Why don't you give us some feedback on that?
So with any kind of pollinator garden, I would say 98% of those plants are going to want as much sun as possible. When you think about pollinators, you think about sunshine, so do the plants. So pick a place on your property where you get good sun exposure. There's not a lot of tree coverage or anything like that, or you can even remove trees if that's the position that you're in to do.
Probably hurt a lot of people's feelings right now.
Well, and that's the thing that's funny with specifically people who come into the garden center and want to talk about maybe starting a pollinator garden, is the fact that they live in an old home or an older property with great big beautiful shade trees in the yard, and they're like, well, I want a pollinator garden. Well, you got to have some sun. So that's just one of those things that you either have big beautiful oaks and maples covering the yard and providing much needed shade in the summer, or you have blazing sun that the flowers and pollinators
See,
are
for those
love.
people, meditation gardens would be perfect.
There you go. Yeah, and shade gardening, that's a massive thing. I've noticed not so much here, but especially in the South where people are living on older properties and, family estates and things like that. Big, massive shade trees are almost a barrier for people because, they want to grow all the pretty, frilly, beautiful flowers. And there are options for that in the shade, but, it's more challenging that way.
Play off something you just said, these older family estates and generational properties, and that's meaningful because the soil is built up, and all the leaves.
Right. Yeah.
So I picture the big ferns unfurling. And you can see them through all wrapped around all the trunks of the trees.
Woodland gardens. Yeah. And that's another one that I had on my list for beginner gardens is if you are privileged enough to live on a property like that with big, beautiful shade trees, woodland gardens are gorgeous, natural spaces that are more, it just looks like it's a part of the natural landscape.
Let's stick on the butterfly garden real fast.
Yeah.
So you said full sun. So how much sun is that? I mean, because for those of you that have been in the garden center before, a lot of them remember Babette, and which was my aunt. And she used to run the garden center here, and she would always say, well, if it's a shade plant, you want it in shade from 12 to 5. If it's a sun plant, you want it in sun from 12 to 5. So is it the same kind of rule, or do you want a little bit more?
So I usually stick to a rule of thumb. Full sun is considered 6 to 8 hours plus.
Okay.
So a minimum of 6 hours is going to be what your sun-loving plants are going to be looking for. Any less than that, you're looking at sacrificing blooms, Any plant that's considered a full sun plant that doesn't get enough sunlight is not going to bloom like it should.
Probably not going to have it's not going to have this full green leaf. If it has a green leaf, it's going to be a
Right.
little thinner looking. Okay.
And it'll stretch anywhere they can stretch towards the sun. They're going to.
So is there any type of, so if somebody says, okay, I have this spot in the yard and let's just keep it simple, because most beginners aren't going to, well, maybe they will at first get a little ambitious.
They always do.
Guilty.
Yeah, we all are.
My landscape, guilty. Still not done after 5 years. Guilty.
Yeah.
So
Ever evolving is what we call it.
I like that. It's good. Let's stick with that. So the title, Ever Evolving Beginner Gardeners.
There you go.
So let's just say they start with like a 4x4 square area, or maybe it's just a little hole in the existing landscape. In a butterfly garden, typically it could be right outside the deck, which might be nice because there are some fragrant plants that go in a butterfly garden.
Yes.
But when I envision one, I see myself sitting on a deck. You've got 3 steps stepping down to a beautifully manicured, blue-green turf and fresh stripes, and then off in the back there's some shrubbery and landscape against a white picket fence, but there's a bare spot. There's my butterfly garden. So my butterflies all flying around it. What kind of soil amendment would be beneficial for them? Do they need much soil amendment, or can they use the heavy clay soils? Because right now we're in St. Charles County, and you drive up the road and development, it's all like red clay.
Right.
It probably reminds you of home a little bit.
Yes, it does.
So what would somebody need to do?
So anytime you have the opportunity, I always encourage people to amend their soil. Now, a lot of pollinator plants, we are lucky to have them hybridized the way that they are, because they are meant to tolerate a range of soils. They generally like to stay on the dry side, things like bee balm, coneflowers, typical things that you want to include in your pollinator gardens are going to be, they tolerate a pretty wide range. Now, any plant is not going to necessarily thrive in our native clay soil or the red clay soil that contractors bring into new developments and things like that, but they will adjust.
Well, the other thing is too is, if just for rule of thumb is always dig it the hole twice as big as the plant. But with some of these perennial gardens, not only digging the hole larger, if you're going to plant them tight together because you want more of that instant impact.
Yes.
Dig out the whole area, and don't get rid of the soil, because you don't want to just fill a clay hole with brand new soil because you just built a bowl and going to hold water. But you want to mix with the existing soil your good topsoil mixes, and so that way the plant can start to acclimate to the existing soil conditions.
Yes.
And then
you're basically just creating a base layer where the roots can start in and then grow stronger down into the native soil.
Yes. Well, I think about a lot of the native grasses, even the cultivars, the native switch grasses. I mean, they grow in clay soils. If you look at soil profiles with the roots that drop down, in some cases, 6, 8, 10 more feet down the ground, that's what creates the porosity in the soil. That's what creates the soils that we have.
Right. Yes.
So very interesting stuff. What about water? Anything specific to watering on butterfly gardens?
So there again, pollinator, any kind of pollinator plants, most pollinator plants are going to be more drought tolerant. They don't need a ton of water. They don't like wet feet, which is generally a problem that we address in the garden center a lot, because people are excited in the spring and they want to plant and do all these things, and we're getting mass amounts of rain.
So wet feet? Explain that. Like what does that mean?
Wet feet. So when a plant is generally newly planted, I see it more with newly planted plants. If we're getting a lot of rain, if the area is heavily irrigated, like lawn irrigation running over onto
see that all the time.
Beds.
Turf irrigation spraying into that. Oh, my turf gets my. Oh my gosh, what?
Yes, that's always a massive problem for people, because there is a massive difference in the needs of turf water requirements versus flower bed water requirements or pollinator garden water requirements. So generally, most pollinator plants are going to be more drought tolerant than others. The wet feet is when they sit in water, whenever the water's not draining off properly, and then you start developing fungal issues and rot in the base of the plant that eventually works its way out.
So the rot and the fungal issues is what you consider is a result of having the wet feet of the plants.
Yes.
So, and I've seen that before with a number of things, whether it's oak leaf hydrangeas sitting in low-lying areas. Oh, this is a shady low spot. Hold on, oak leaf hydrangea, shady low spot. Hold on a sec.
Right.
I've done that in my house before. Just I can get away with it.
Yeah.
You can't.
Sometimes you can. I tell people all the time, every plant is different, and it doesn't hurt to try as long as you are keeping a careful eye on things. That's something for beginner gardeners especially. Don't be afraid to try something just because, like oak leaf hydrangeas, I know many, many, many areas where they are planted in the full sun. And depending on variety, depending on the soil composition, depending on how much rain they're getting or how much irrigation they're getting, they'll adjust. Plants are pretty resilient. So I always encourage people, if you think you want to try something, you might as well, because you can always pop it out and move it somewhere else if it's not working.
So last question I have on the butterfly gardens, we're going to get into veggie gardens next, is care. You just let it go?
I always encourage people there again, if you are able to amend your soil, do it. Your plants will thank you, and you will be very glad that you did in the long run. So if you are able to amend your soil, it's always good to use a biotone starter fertilizer.
Highly recommend it. Use it in every one of our landscapes.
Everything,
Literally
everything is planted with biotone, and we see results. That's why we continue to use it and suggest it to our customers, and our customers come back for more anytime they plant. So using a starter fertilizer, a lot of pollinator plants are not heavy feeders, but in their bloom cycles, they're going to require more nutrients because they need more energy to produce those big blooms that are attracting the pollinators. So a good plant tone regimen is always a good idea as they're getting ready to bloom, as the buds are setting. But other than that, there's not a ton of care. The more you deadhead anything that you plant, anything that flowers, the more you deadhead, the more reblooms you're going to get out of it. So things like coneflowers, it's always a good idea to just snip those spent blooms off so that you get more buds more quickly after that.
So what's really cool is some of the hummingbirds that I see that come into some of the gardens, especially with the coneflower and some of the different flowers as well. So it's not just butterflies; it's going to attract a few other things.
Absolutely. Moths are pollinators. Wasps are considered pollinators. Any kind of insect that is visiting that flower for the pollen itself is going to cross-pollinate other plants around it, and you're going to get more flowers.
All right, so let's switch gears to veggie gardens. Because everybody likes the whole food to table concept, and I don't know one person that doesn't like that idea. Now, they don't like the idea of going out and actually tilling laboriously in a 20 by 10 rectangle garden,
right?
Especially again here with the clay soil, that's a lot of work to not only take off the sod, adjust irrigation, put in new soil, amend it, and get a thick enough soil profile to actually give it some substance, because I know at my house I've got a real deep soil profile on one side because it's on a hill, and then a very little one on the other side, and you can see the difference as it gets towards the thinner profile.
Yeah.
What are some things that people could do to start small but yet see some nice results out of a simple veggie garden? And what are some things that you would suggest for a new person starting out?
So in the very beginning stages of planning a veggie garden, you want to consider your strengths, your time allotment, things like that. I always tell people, if you've never had a veggie garden, if you are unsure of your skills as far as gardening, you can always start with a tomato plant in a pot. You can always start with an herb garden in a pot. You can get a really pretty ceramic pot that you can plant up season to season with different things to try out what you want to try, and not have a massive investment in it, not have a massive time investment, not have to spend so much time weeding, things like that. So either a container or a raised bed is always a good starter point for people who are interested in veggie gardening.
What's nice about a pot though is you can move it also. So
Yes,
the garden is not just stay put.
Right, and you can, like I said, you can replant it season to season to try out different things and not have to turn your soil and all that kind of stuff.
I remember I call them Egyptian pots, but they're the terracotta pots where you have the regular top part where you plant the plant, but then there's like the little pockets all over the side of it. So
strawberry jars or herb pots.
I don't know what to call it, but but you have a lot of variety in all of that to try. Oh, I'm gonna try something here. I'm gonna try something here. I'm gonna try something here. Obviously, you want to put like a tomato plant on top. You put like your lettuce and herbs and stuff on the side. But
they make giant versions of those as well. And there's a lot of companies now with more and more people interested in organic gardening and veggie gardening at home and things like that. No, we actually don't. I have not been able to find a company that doesn't sell direct. I've seen them online.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But think about that though. You walk out because you're typically there. I'm gonna go back to my deck. It's the deck is attached to the sunroom or the kitchen itself with a sliding door and a bay window in a lot of cases.
Right.
And so you walk out of the kitchen, you walk around the deck, and there's your herbs and your vegetables. And I say, I'm taking a little parsley.
Patio gardens.
Yeah, I'm
that's
take
what
a
I
little
call
lettuce
them.
off it. I'm gonna grab a couple of cherry tomatoes. Also, you got a salad right there, literally right off the plant.
Yeah.
You can go and wash it. Most people would. My wife would. Maybe I would just eat it right then. But
and that's the advantage of knowing exactly what goes into your soil and
very true
chemicals that you're using and that kind of stuff is that you have the satisfaction knowing that you don't necessarily have to wash the plant.
How many people picked up that head of lettuce before they got
exactly? Yeah, grocery store stuff is it. When you think about it too much, it kind of sketches me out because, I mean, how many people hand loaded and unloaded and bagged it at the grocery store and it rolled around in the back of your car before you got home.
And I know I've said this on past podcasts and I'll probably say it again. I don't know when I say it, but like the garden I've had in my house last year was the least planted I planted it, but yet the most yielding of any garden that I've had. I have these 4x8 raised cedar boxes that I built. My dad, I think, was actually, oh my gosh, you built that? Like, you can build something? Because carpentry work is not my thing.
Right.
And so I put three cherry tomato plants in just one of these boxes. Like, literally, I've got 2 foot between the boxes, and I could not walk between them. It was, my boxes are probably 24 inches tall, but I had another 4 foot of tomato plant. Like, it was taller than me, and it was like a forest. I couldn't believe the yield that I got out of it.
Yeah.
I wish I would have pruned it back a little bit more is what I should have done, but nonetheless.
You learn season to season, though. That's the fun about it. Especially, that's another thing with beginner gardeners, and especially veggie gardens, is make notes. Like, take notes on your garden. You can never remember what you hated about last season when you're super excited about starting this season. But if you take those notes, it's going to change the game for you every single year. And
so, all right, we got the patio container or the pot, or we've got a small 4x4 or 2x6 raised planter, an 18x6 raised planter, 18x4 raised planter box. We've seen kind of the rectangle ones before. What are some things that what are some plants? So what are some good like first couple plants that would be the easiest and get a result out of? So
when I'm talking to people, we've been having lots of questions come in about starting seeds because we talked about that on the podcast last time, and that's kind of the time of year that it is everybody's itching to get started, and starting seeds is a good way to do that. The easiest things to start are leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, cabbage, those types of things, and radishes. Radishes are one of the most quick-turning, instant gratification veggie crops that you can grow. Now, I have grown radishes a ton just because it's fun and it's quick and it's, super simple.
Yeah, I grew something.
Yeah, but I don't like radishes, so that's not my thing. But that's always something that I try to encourage people to do if they're nervous about trying to do a bunch of seed starting. And people always, it's so funny. I always have people come in and they get a massive handful of seed packets. And they come up to the counter and we start checking out and they're like, well, how many do I have there? How much space am I going to need for that? All these questions, because you can literally hold them all in your hand and you've got 20 2,900 square feet of veggie plants in your hand that you don't even realize. But radishes specifically are always a good one to start out with. Even if you don't necessarily like them, you can incorporate them into your cooking and find different ways to cook them. But they're one of the fastest turn crops that there is.
So lettuce is definitely an easy one.
Beans.
Green beans are
Yes,
ridiculously
yes,
easy. Like
yeah.
handfuls and handfuls and handfuls. We ate so many green beans last year. It was crazy.
And you can can them and all that kind of stuff, freeze them,
That's
flash
the class
freeze
that we
'em.
should do is canning.
Yeah.
Because especially before we go into springtime
Right.
with the gardening, because people that do get a little ambitious and do have more success than they're anticipating. What am I going to do with all this?
Right.
It'd be kind of a neat thing that they can keep, especially towards the end of summertime, because that's when green beans really stop, or they start to kind of go backwards, get the
Yes.
brown spots on them.
I would love to do a canning class. I have not done a lot of canning. I grandmothers, my mom, lots of people in my family have always canned, but I just never caught that home class, so that would be a very interesting one. I always try to err on the side of caution when planting a garden, because I know, like me and my husband, it's just us at home. And so I always try to be mindful of that, because there is no guilt like having to throw away perfectly good, beautiful produce that you grew in your own garden. So
I literally had probably 3 5-gallon buckets full of cherry tomatoes that I just went bad because I couldn't keep up with them.
yeah.
So.
You and your dad both are ones to like bring in a massive paper bag of stuff. Like, somebody take this home.
Well, I was like, look at this. It's not a big space, and all of a sudden, poof!
Yeah.
2 months later, space yielded a little bit more than we thought it was going to yield. So.
always, yeah.
So let's talk. Let's jump over to like tools, because it's going to be going kind of into care with the vegetable garden as well.
Yep.
I came in here saying like, look, all I need is a pair of hand trimmers or scissors and a hose. Like, let's go.
All right.
And you're like, but you could probably have a little more fun if you had a few more tools. So why?
And I'm a tool nut. I've always been, like whenever I was a kid, and my mom has this same trait, so I got it from her. Going to a hardware store was like going to a toy store. Like, I just loved going to hardware stores. And even still to this day, like when I see new tools come on the market, especially gardening tools, the augers that are becoming more popular, anything that's going to make your time in the garden more enjoyable and more productive and more effective is going to help you succeed and help you enjoy yourself more. So I always the more tools, the better, in my opinion.
So I have my raised planters. I have my in-ground garden. The favorite tool I bought was one of those still tillers.
Yes.
They just need to be heavier.
Yeah.
Because they don't get deep enough.
Right.
They just skim the surface. So
yeah. Especially our soil here, it's difficult.
Exactly. So so what are your name a couple of those? You were telling me about one.
So that's a very important one, and that's also with beginner gardening, and talking about pots versus raised beds versus in-ground gardening. Weeding is always something that gets away from people. They don't stay on top of it like they should, and all
Guilty.
of it. It gets hot in the summertime, and those weeds are taking off like crazy, and people are over it. I always hear that from people. So a lady came into the garden center early in the summer last year, and she was looking at all the tools that we have, and it is a little overwhelming. You always want to talk to a garden center associate when you come in, because if you don't know what you're looking at, you're just like, why the heck would I spend $40 on this little hand tool? Well, she and I had that conversation, and she was like, what the heck is this thing? And it's called a Cobra. It's a DeWitt Cobra, and it has a forked tongue. It's just a steel bar that comes out with a little forked tongue, like a snake tongue, and a really nicely sized wooden handle. And she said, why is this thing so expensive? And I said, well, they're very high quality tools. The DeWitt line is. They're lifetime guaranteed. And I said, honestly, you don't want a cheap weeder. You don't want something that you're going to have in your hand for hours a week to be uncomfortable. And so I said, I personally think that you should try it. I said, I gave her the whole spiel about weeding and how it gets away from everybody. And if you have the proper tools, it's going to make your time more enjoyable, more efficient. So I left her to look, and, she ended up getting one that day. And I always question whether I did the right thing, because I don't want to talk people into something that they're not prepared to use, or, things like that. And so maybe a month, 2 months later in the summer, as the weeds were getting bad because we had so much rain in the spring, I saw her back in, and, we just got to talking, and she said, I am actually here to buy, I'm getting one for my mom and one for my friend. And I was like, that is so awesome. I love to hear that, because it really does. I mean, having the proper tools for the job and having high quality tools makes a massive difference in what you're doing. So I would say a pair of hand pruners, a weeder, if you're feeling frisky, I guess, a shovel, a hose. I like hand tools just because I'm one of those people who is down in the dirt. Like I don't do much from standing level. I try to get down there. And so like a hand trowel is always good, especially if you're planting, transplanting seedlings and things like that. And then seed starting, that's a whole nother realm of a kit that you need.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
That's something we should probably get into the next couple of weeks, because it's getting to be.
It is that time.
Yep, it's getting to be time here. So, and then last podcast we were talking about, there's a lot of interest in seeds. I mean, so what's the seed supply like downstairs? What do we got? What do we got going on?
Oh, it's awesome. So we bulked up early, because we had seen, even over the holiday season, that we were selling a lot more seeds than normal, because people are more interested in, with the last year and everything, being at home more and that kind of stuff. And there's just more information out there on seed starting now as well. So we stocked up early this year, and we've got a really good supply, lots of really interesting stuff. Cut flower gardening is becoming the forefront of the new gardening fads. Everybody's interested in a cut flower garden. So that's another one that there are so many options, and there are so many super easy beginner type options that we can literally walk you through step by step what you need to do in the garden center.
I'm a slightly tangent.
Yeah.
So you're noticing a lot of resurgence, and think of the Marvel movies and the Batman movies. I mean, you think about the audience that's actually seeing those. It's a lot of the people that grew up with the cartoons, or grew up with the old 80s movies. And you're seeing that with a lot of different things. I mean, look at some of the clothing attire. Look at some of the architectural and design side of things when it comes to homes.
Right.
You're kind of seeing
mid-century modern.
Well, you're seeing kind of a nostalgia aspect to it. Yeah. And with everybody being home over the past year, and for the foreseeable future, a lot of people are home permanently now with their job, because they can work from home. But even the people that are going to be home more, because some of the things I think we're going to see, at least what I've been paying attention to, is more of a flex work schedule, where you're in the office 3 days a week, and then the next week is 2, and then that kind of thing.
Right.
I think you're going to see a push towards more of this yard, being in the yard, nostalgia. What if the cutting gardens? How many people's parents had cutting gardens? So now they got their kids at home, and they want to do something, because I know my wife is at home with 3 kids this morning, all under the age of 6. If she goes, go outside, because where else are they going to go besides be inside and annoy her?
Right, yeah.
So, but to get them outside doing something, go outside and do something with them. Now, gardening's not her thing, but for me, my oldest, nothing more than to go out in the garden.
Luca loves being outside.
Can we plant something today? Can we get the tiller? Can I use a tiller today? And that was just last year. I let him start using a tiller at 6, and I think back, I was like, I cannot wait for spring to come to get outside. So I'm tangenting to again this nostalgia, because I remember my dad putting me on this old, it wasn't a BCS stuff, but it was old rusted, like all crazy orange, 2 big tractor tires on it, and he would put me on the handles, and he would literally had a big motor in the front. And he would just kind of till with me on the handles. I remember being very comfortable, but he would. I just wanted to be out there with him while he was tilling the garden.
Yeah.
And so now
same thing with me on the tractor with my dad at home. Yeah, I have very vivid memories of that kind of stuff, and it was because my mom said, "Get her out of here, go do something."
And so it's just I'm saying for everybody listening, if you've got grandkids, my dad loves having the boys over, and again, Arlo's on the inside, typically kicking soccer balls and stuff, and Luca's on the outside, being out there welding and doing all that kinds of work in the gardens, wants to be a part of building something. And so if you've got a grandkid or you've got a kid yourself that likes that, I mean, this is perfect. And they will always, I'm 34. I remember this from my father, and I will always remember it. They will always remember the memories that you get to make. And you know what? If it's a flop, it's a flop. You can laugh about it in 10 years. That kind of thing. It's fun.
Right.
It's fun.
Absolutely.
So
it's good for them.
I'm going to save the meditation garden for another, because there's a couple cool things. We talk about reflexology. If you don't know what that means, go Google reflexology garden to see some of the awesome walks that are out there, labyrinths, and then some simple things you can do for meditation gardens. I'm a big visualization meditation person. Every single day I spend at least 2 minutes doing it. And kind of give my personal opinion on what I would like if I had one at my house. I don't, because I don't have time. I'm usually in my truck in a park somewhere doing it. But anyways, we're going to get all that stuff later on. And so if you have any questions, I do want to throw out that we have a email that you can email us. If you like the show, have any feedback for us, want to know more about it, you can email us podcast@frisellanursery.com, or you can always go to help@frisellanursery.com. You can give us a call, 636-798-2555. That's a direct line to the garden center. We are going to be doing a lot of giveaways this year. Just for the chance that anybody would be listening to this, and by tomorrow, which is Friday the 12th, we do have a giveaway that's going to be announced tomorrow, so you can check out our social media.
The 13th is when we're announcing.
That's right, 13th. So check out our website. Our social media on Facebook, and you can find out more about that.
Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you.
And we're going to be trying to do weekly giveaways, and the giveaways will sometimes, when we are able to, pertain to the time of season, what you should be thinking about. So the giveaway this week is a basket with basically everything that you need for a small starter, like veggie garden. There's a couple of cut flower packets in there, but there's the new Proven Winner seeds. They have a new line out that is really cool, and that's included in the giveaway this week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Says so much better than I could. Much closer to it than I am. So we've got so much happening right now. We have really brought in some great people to the organization this year that you guys are. It's good, and for the sole benefit of creating a better experience for all of our clients, all of our customers, all of our listeners, all the people that interact with us, all the people that come to us just to get a little piece of advice for how to do something different in the garden. We are super excited for the year that is ahead of us, and so we can show you guys something new. So definitely check out what we have, and there will be a lot that you can get a glimpse of on social media, but nothing. I promise you walk in this garden center today, I walk in every time, and what Laura has done with this place, you come in this place, it's going to give you an experience, and that is the whole goal, and that gets me so freaking excited.
And walking around the greenhouse when there is snow on the ground and it is nasty is an experience you don't want to miss out on this time of year. It really is like just a little glimpse of vacation. Like, you can just go walk through the greenhouse and it's warm and there's so much green. It's definitely worth the drive.
So at Frisella Nursery or at Frisella Landscape Group, our handles on Instagram and Facebook. So feel free to check us out. Let's cut this off here. We appreciate you all for listening. Again, subscribe, share with a friend if you like what we're talking about. If think that it would help somebody that wants to start their own garden. We would greatly appreciate it. We appreciate your ears, especially for all of you that have come over from the radio show. Thank you. And we'll get back to you guys next week.
Thank you.